Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Darren with Komprise. I'm here with two gurus of all things NetApp and partnerships, Jake True, our head of global alliances, and Steve Moore, a man of many roles. We'll say information architect today. Steve, does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, guys. So for those of you joining live, you can use the panels and ask us questions. We'll endeavor to get answers to you right away. We are going to spend most of our time diving into the solution and introducing you to Komprise and talking about our value proposition for NetApp customers. So let me just go right to it. So first of all, we were really pleased to be a gold sponsor at the NetApp Insight virtual conference earlier this month. And it was really a well-executed event. The theme of the show was all about, and there's a few emails you might have received about it. I like the line, "For the love of the cloud." And not surprisingly, NetApp made a lot of announcements at the conference, had some great speakers, lots of interesting sessions. And really, the theme was, as you can imagine, all about how to accelerate that adoption of the cloud, that movement of data to the cloud, and as we like to say, how to make sure the right data is moving to the right place at the right time. And that's really where Komprise comes in. So Jake, you spoke a few times at the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you took away and a little bit about the partnership?
Sure, absolutely, Darren, and appreciate you putting this together today. And just an overview on the event itself. It was really well attended, got a ton of really great feedback from those that did attend, and really got to showcase the great partnership, the long-standing partnership that NetApp and Komprise have had over the years, as you can see over to the left-hand side since 2015. And got to showcase a lot of the great functionality that goes between Komprise and NetApp, whether that be bringing non-NetApp data to on-premise NetApp, or even to different cloud variations that they have as well. So, again, really great feedback all the way around. As you can see, bottom left-hand corner from one of the attendees that we had there. But overall, it was a great event, showcased a lot of our functionality together, and definitely looking forward to next year.
All right. Well, let me bring you guys back into this before we dive into the Komprise solution. I mean, Steve, you work with a lot of NetApp customers. As you see on this table, it's really all about visibility, the data mobility, and then ultimately getting more value and delivering data to the right place at the right time. Are there trends you're seeing in terms of adoptions or the adoption or the kinds of customers that you're seeing us work with, or that where NetApp is going in particular?
Yeah. Many people have known us for quite some time for doing some tiering to StorageGRID, where we could move like that 60-70% of cold data over and help customers save money, and even take that money and reapply it. And then more recently, in the last year, we've been seeing a lot more activity about moving NAS to the cloud and doing NAS implementation. So helping to be able to get data across multiple vendors into Azure NetApp Files or FSxN for ONTAP for AWS and things too.
Fantastic. So let's just walk through really quickly the Komprise solution, and we call it Komprise Intelligent Data Management. And in here we'll just zero in, of course, on how we work with NetApp customers. So for Komprise, it starts with visibility, getting that complete picture across all your NetApp NAS, as well as other storage environments to understand data usage. How much data is cold? How much data is hot? How can we make sure you understand what you have before you actually think about a data mobility strategy? And when it comes to data mobility, there's many use cases, and you're going to see that in Steve's demonstration, where we'll spend most of our time today. Migrating data from non-NetApp, we see a lot of customers moving from Isilon to NetApp environments in particular, to NetApp ONTAP, to Amazon FSx for NetApp, ANF, CVO. So a lot of different flavors of NetApp and options for you in the cloud. And then working seamlessly across all of your NetApp environment, trying to help you make sure you take full advantage of what you have. It could be working with SnapMirror, it could be working with StorageGRID, other NetApp technologies. And then ultimately, what I think this is really all about is how to get not just maximum savings from your data, but also to get maximum value. And that's where you'll see, we'll talk about transparent tiering, how to make sure you're getting that what we call file object duality and get full file access, native object access with the Komprise solution. And what you'll hear us talk about our global file index, that ability to search, create, and then create data workflows across NetApp and the cloud. So some of the results that we're going to talk about and share with you. Our goal is really to help you get maximum savings on storage, backup, and cloud costs. Our goal is to help you have a fast, easy, trusted path to the cloud. And we have some great, data points around our migration performance, being able to help you get there 27 times faster, in particular with your cloud data migrations, and then ultimately how to reduce the time it takes for you to get your value from your unstructured file and object data. So Jake, you work a lot with customers, and I love this quote from Pfizer. Want to tell us a bit about that before we jump into the demo?
Sure, absolutely. And Pfizer is obviously an organization that's quite large. Of course, most people have heard of them before, but we were really able to do a couple of things: recognize what needed to be brought where and at what time. So that was bringing data to the on-premise NetApp system that was in their infrastructure, as well as moving colder data to AWS. So sort of that hybrid model that they had, which really gave them the ultimate savings that you mentioned earlier for reallocation of funds to, at that time, was going towards COVID-19 research. So getting the savings and obviously continuous data insight was really where we won the day with Pfizer and continue to help them to this day.
Fantastic. All right. So hopefully that gives you all a sense of really, the Komprise solution from a, a talking points perspective. But now let's, I think, with Komprise, seeing is believing. So Steve, if you're ready to take over, I'm going to hand it to you to dive in and show us what Komprise is all about.
Very definitely. Thank you, Darren. And so with Komprise, one of the main screens you'll come to is this plan page, which really gives you the foundation for being able to make a lot of decisions about your data and about determining actions for next things, like maybe it's tiering, maybe it's migrations, maybe it's being able to load a data lake with some data and stuff. And where Komprise really works well is that we're all standards-based. We connect to anything that's NFS or SMB. We can attach those systems. We can read them much like any end user would, so you don't have to do anything special to set Komprise up. It's as simple as just coming in, adding a file server in, picking the platform that you work with, identifying it, and we'll start to load information about it. One of the first things that we'll do is come in and load up what all the shares are that we see for that different system. And so it's not unusual to see like 20, 30 different shares listed down through here. And at that point, we're not really doing anything with the storage, but once you do this enable share, that's where the magic of Komprise really begins. And that's where we go out and we query the system and ask about how much capacity is that one, and we'll show that right away. And we'll begin looking at all the metadata for this environment, and we'll start collecting that metadata and summarizing it. Now, we don't have to build a database. Many other systems, I was working with a logistics company. They had a share, it was only 10 terabytes in size, but it was over 1.5 billion files. And they'd been running this other analysis tool for 2 weeks to look at it, look at the information. We were able to deploy Komprise very quickly, attach that system, and about 26 hours later, we had analyzed all the space and were able to show them what was going on with that particular share in their environment. And so here again, we can come in, identify that system, and show you what's happening in that environment. For example, let me turn all these shares off. As you can see, we can look across the environment, or we can look at individual shares. And here's that one I just added. So we already showing you what the capacity was we got from it. From what we've analyzed of that system, of which so far we've looked at about 21 terabytes of it, we're able to project out what we think in terms of millions of files there are, what some of the age ranges of those files are, and things like that. So very quickly, and this again with that logistics company, very quickly they were able to see information about their environment. They wanted to get into a migration very quickly and needed that data to know how many files, what kind of network they needed, what the destination size needed to be, and things like that. And if we stare at this little graph long enough while we're doing this analysis, you'll notice that these little sections will adjust. As we learn more, we become more into focus. So like a microscope, you can The longer we run, the more in focus we become, to eventually we've analyzed all the space and you know exactly where you stand. The other thing that we do right away is, again, looking at the specific share, we can see what kinds of data there is there. So we give you these summary graphs. So, you know, again, these are across all vendors, all platforms. You can see what kind of data you have on it, you know, space by size, you know, and obviously, you know, big files take up a lot of space. But if I come and look at it by file count, I can see that, you know, there's more little files than there are big files. These are things that you'd want to know if you're going to do some tiering or migrations. In particular, if these bottom two lines are the longest to the right, then that means they have tons of tiny files, which is going to take a while. We're going to look at things in terms of files per second rather than megabytes per second. But if they have lots of, you know, big files and big capacity, and that's where their space is, we're going to see things move quickly in terms of megabytes per second. So being able to have those conversations with customers about their data, what kind it is, who owns it, where is it sitting, is all great conversations to have up front with customers when you're looking at doing data mobility and looking at being able to place your data around. And then we go one step farther. There's about 5 different categories that'll show up here, and we show them when we find them. We look at the health of the data too. So it would be great to be able to address directories and folders and files you maybe can't access because, you know, somebody's changed it, or invalid characters, or crazy long names, all sorts of things you can look through here to address before you start into data movement, data mobility. And that's the big thing about Komprise, is it's not their traditional architecture of a master client. We actually have a very share nothing expandable environment that's built out of these observers and proxies, which are stateless machines that we can grow at any time, so we can scale them up or scale them out for our environment. And the other really cool thing is tied right into this one interface. We can look and work across multiple sites and multiple locations. So we can see what's happening in Boston versus Atlanta, and you see we got different observers here and different proxies. We can have different shares in Boston that we have from Atlanta. So it gives you a central console for looking at all this information and working with it. And the other really cool thing, even above and beyond just that general information, is the ability to come in with deep analytics and build your own queries. So that first part gives you a lot of great information to be able to start into understanding your data and taking action with it. Deep analytics is where you can come in and really drill into that data. Maybe I want to find those orphan files that people have left the company. So I can run a specific query for that and look for that particular kind of data. Now, my simulator set doesn't really have any of that data in there, but I could look for that if I wanted. Or I could come along and look for, say, all my virtual machines in an environment, or video files. That's another one that comes up. Let's look at video files. We've had numerous accounts come back to us where people have been storing their personal videos and DVD libraries in the environments. So now we can start to find them. And the way we can drill into those people is we can look at videos, and we can come down to owners, and we can ask Best here why he has so much video data in this environment. So great information, really helpful information. Had another customer recently that was going through a merger and acquisition, and they were told by the company they acquired that they'd gotten rid of all their Lotus Notes files and stuff. But they were able to come in here with deep analytics, take a look at those systems and identify them. And again, that comes with the power of deep analytics plus the power of multi-site, of being able to drill in and look across the whole environment. You see, I can select those different shares that I want to run my query against across the location. So that gives us basically a global file index that you can really understand your data and select it and work with it. So many customers have been finding this hugely successful for them in being able to understand their data and what they have and where they have it. Now that we understand our data a lot better, we can start to determine some actions with that data. And some of those actions might be things like tiering, or maybe replacing a NAS system with another. And the really cool thing built into this tool as well is this edit cost model down here. And so this is where we can come in and start to put in the cost of maybe some on-prem storage today. If we're doing some, DR and backup for it, we can start to specify maybe some hardware. So this might be like there's 2 data domains in that environment, so we could put in what the hardware cost is for those, put some number in for the software cost for that. I'm just making up some numbers. But to own that data and keep it on-prem, between the storage hardware and all the protections for it and everything, it'd be about $2,000 a year per terabyte, adding that up. So yeah, as you see, we can sit down with the customer and put in their numbers for this space. And then I can come along and say, well, let's look at maybe replacing that with another storage pool. And maybe that one's, $500 a terabyte. And maybe we need some Komprise to move to it, or maybe we don't. We'll put some number in for that. And then I can come in, we've put some numbers in, and come over here to the edit side of things. And this is where we can actually apply it against the actual amount of data. So if I'm going to take a look at replacing some systems, I can come along to my filter and do the specific set of systems that I want to look at working with and do some pricing comparisons with. And I can see that and see that information. So here's if I were to do a replacement, and if I were to continue with my old solution and adding to it and growing it, I can see what the numbers are like over time. If I move over to a new environment, I can see what the new numbers are like over time, and what the cost savings would be is the delta between the two lines. Maybe I want to look at tiering for the environment. So now if you come along and say, let's tier data that's 6 months or older for those systems, let's come in and put some cost for that. So we'll go to a cloud solution, or maybe this is the cost of storage grid that we're looking to, and some money for Komprise to do our transparent tiering, which is really cool stuff. It's where we leave behind a symbolic link instead of a stub file. It's like a shortcut. It's a window shortcut, basically. And then customer still sees all their data, but we can move it to, say, storage grid with no egress costs, and see the price, get an 80% savings, and apply that to the cold data that they have in their environment. And we know where that cold data is because we identified the systems and we put that age in there, and we can see how much data that really is. And now we can look at our graph down here and see that, they're having about 20% growth over a year. And if we kept it all on-prem, it'd be about $2 million a year to keep up with it. But if we were to put some in the cloud and some on-prem, and we'd done that from the beginning, then it'd only be about 830,000 a year to keep it on-prem, and about 236,000 a year to keep the cold data in the cloud. And again, remember, with Komprise, with that transparent tiering, the end user still has full access to all their data. They just hit that symbolic link, they double click, their file opens, and they're still on their way. So when you talk about data mobility, your management's going to come back and say, well, what's it going to cost me, right? So here's where you see you can come right into Komprise, put this cloud costing information into play. And again, you can look at it across your organization. You can look at it across sites if you're an enterprise customer, have multiple sites. Really cool stuff. Now, we've looked at all this. We've done some pricing. We've looked at our data. We figured out where we can and can't access data. We've addressed some of those things. Next is getting to that mobility part. And so being able to come in, and maybe, traditionally it's been a lot of NAS to NAS, or moving NAS to cloud. That's where we can come to this migrate part now. So you see right out of that tool, and remember that logistics company, they wanted to understand their data. They didn't have to stop then and go and switch over to another tool to do the migrations. They can come right out of Komprise, right into the migration tool here, and come along to do add migration. And so now I can come along and select a system. So I can select, say, this Isilon in the home directory, and I can come on to, oops, I haven't turned that one on yet. Let's go with this one here. And then I can go on to do, it's giving me a conflict on these things. Oh, that's because I have them in the migration plan. I'm sorry, so let me hop out of this. So basically we have a simple little wizard to select a source, select a destination, and to be able to move on from there. Once we've started up the migration portion, we use what we call an iterative process to move data from one location to another. So you see I've kind of started some here. Again, we do support as far back as NetApp 7 to be able to move information into the cloud. And then we can move to Azure NetApp files. We can move to AWS FSxN for the environment, and be able to help customers, do that mobility part and do that placement part. Now, like I said, we use an iterative process. So that means the first iteration, we're going to move all the data. And generally, my little simulator environment is super fast, so it says a minute. But in the real world, it's going to take a couple hours, maybe a day or so, to move some of the data and move it over. And you see, we always keep the first iteration on the right, so you know where you began. And then what we'll do is we'll wait a little period, and that period is by default 24 hours, but you can adjust that to how you need. And then we'll come and we'll get the deltas on the next move, and we'll get those changes moved over. Now, my little simulator environment, we move pretty much everything every time, so you'll see that in here. But in the real world, the amount of data and the amount of files that we're moving would be going down to match those rates of change. So we're moving the files. Each one of these is like a final cover simulator. We're doing full file system checks. We're doing full attribute checks. We're writing the data over, and when we write it, we read it back and do a data integrity check. So we run MD5 hashes and compare them to make sure all the bits read back properly in the proper order. And then we log everything that we did during an iteration in a log file for a full audit trail for customers. So we'll show what we added to the environment. Over time, people might delete files, modify files, change attributes. We record all those things with each iteration. We may encounter some errors. Maybe the network took an outage, during an iteration. No big deal. We'll have a lot of errors for that one. The network comes back on the next iteration. Everything's working fine. Everything will go smoothly and cleanly. So we're very resilient and can handle a lot of situations. Maybe Jake had a file open where we were running an iteration, and then he's gone home when we run the next one, so we're able to catch it then. So we can go through this and make this very resilient and easy. Again, another part of our architecture is that we're very scalable with those observers and proxies. We can add more, we can scale them up, scale them out, and then we automatically load balance across all these things to give a lot of parallelization to be able to handle a lot of these tasks and a lot of these iterations very, very quickly in the environment. And then eventually we'll do that final cutover. And you can see when to do that final cutover and how long Komprise will take, because on each one of these, we give an average runtime for an iteration. And this average runtime is really the previous 3 iterations added together and averaged out. So you can see about how long that cutover window might be that Komprise will need in that window. You can schedule that with your customers, get them off, push the data out, run the iteration, do the final where we do that last file system check, and you're done. We've had customers move over 700, 800 shares over a weekend in a migration process. And you see, we give a great tool to be able to analyze multiple migrations, all together, all live, all at the same time. Again, we can build out the infrastructure to handle that, because customers with unstructured data that's growing into petabytes of data quite quickly and quite easily with customers today. So migration is a big thing. So here's how we can get data from one vendor to another vendor. We can get from aging platforms to new platforms, in bulk, move them quickly and efficiently. But we also have customers that are looking to get data, more refined view into their data, and to be able to place it into more unique locations. And again, right out of the same tool, rather than having to go into something else, we can go to that deep analytics part. Now, remember, we ran that query earlier. So we were able to build up some queries and save them off, and we can see what those queries are in the environment up here. And for some reason, it's not allowing me to do that. Oh, here's my different queries in the environment. So now I can look and see what I've queried and built up for cold data. Again, I can build my own query sets, and I can save them off and give them unique names for the environment. And then we've also recently added in the ability for you to give a department head access to this deep analytics page so they can build their own queries. So maybe it's a university and we're looking to carve out the data sets and know which professor's data is where, what they've got. So I could come along and do a build for a query by owner, by file name and stuff. We have the share we added isn't fully, so that's the blue line up there. But yeah, we can run through and build these query sets up. They can identify the particular sets that they want to work with. We could even go so far as to tag those data sets. So tagging gives us a bit more of a static way of identifying files, and we can run a query off of those tags before, which is for me kind of hidden behind this little bar down here. Maybe I can get to it. You see, and then we could come along and create tags and have them in there and be able to look the data up over those tags again as well. Once the gentleman has identified the particular queries, tag data sets that they want to work with, they can make them public. So that's a part of the deep analytics role, is they can build their own query sets. Once they make them public, they can work with the administrator, and now's where some really great magic happens. Now's where I can come along and I can come to my plan and I can go to tier my data by age, which is your traditional tiering. So now I can say, let's look at what's in our remote offices and view that by remote office only. Come on. And see how much data that actually is and do it by age. Or I could come along and say, let's take that query. Let's take that particular query that we just built up, and let's say it was engineering data. And let's look at the data that's associated with that one and see the data, see what's involved there. So let me come back to this group is performance. So let's go and choose our performance group here and see how much data that actually is. So very little data because of the engineering that's there. But you know, we can identify that information, see what it is, and now we can go and put it onto, say, an object store platform, or we could put it onto another NAS platform, or feed it into a data lake or something like that too. So here's where we can be selective, and we can work, you know, in bulk with data to be able to choose where to put the data and the information that's out there, or we can be very selective with our data, like the performance in the querying, and be able to position it into data lakes or other NAS systems, or to divide it out somewhere to give that mobility for the data. And that could be either by tiering, which is what a move is, where we'll leave that symbolic link behind or not. So we can do enable links to leave that shortcut, or we can do disable links to just move the file off and take it away. We have that with legal firms. You know, case is done, take the data off of the NAS system and put it into long-term storage. You can do that by disabling the links there. Maybe like those professors, you know, they're done with those projects, but they still want to have access. We could leave that shortcut behind. When they double click on that shortcut, they still have their data. So we can do that through tiering, either by group or be selective, or we can look at it in terms of putting a copy somewhere. Maybe I want to load it into the cloud to be able to run an AI or ML application against it. Maybe there's a way that we can look for a new algorithm, or, you know, do, you know, audio to text for like a movie file to transcribe it. Any number of tools that are now becoming available in the cloud, we could selectively put that data up there and be able to do that processing for it through this as well. So what we're heading towards next is to be able to integrate this together with our API. And we have a full API that you can drive everything through Komprise through that. But think about this. We could then go and build that selective query. We could put that query set up there. For example, we could find, you know, all the finance apps and all the finance data that's out there, identify them, build that data set up, put that query in place, run that query, move the data over to the cloud, so we could move it over to Azure NetApp Files, run Macie against it, so it could do the PII identification. It could send us back tags for the files. This one has a phone number, this one has a credit card, that sort of stuff. And we could feed that back into the deep analytics that the end user could then use that tag to do more selective things with that data, and then run more applications against it as well. So we call that smart workflows. So as you see, we're bringing these things together, and we've also brought them together in other ways too. For example, smart migrations. Maybe we could do tiering first and then move the data to the NAS platform. So that way we can get somebody off of, say, an all spinning disk platform into a flash platform for faster performance, but they don't have to buy as much, because we could put some of the colder data onto storage grid and leave those symbolic links there, so the customer still has full access to all the data, but it's now on 2 platforms, and it's transparent to the end user as to where it is, and they don't really care. As long as they have access, that's usually the case. They're happy with that. So we're able to bring all these things together into this mobility, into this one tool, replaces like 4 or 5 tools. As you can see, we take a little different approach. We use a very scalable, you know, share nothing environment. We can add more observers, more proxies anytime for more performance. As customer environment grows, we can grow right along with it. We add in, you know, additional roles, and we have new roles coming, you know, general administrator, but also this deep analytics role, and then we're gonna have a site role as well. So we got more coming in that area. We've got more performance tuning that we've got coming in migrations for more WAN support to be able to move data even faster. And then, like I said, more support and more things happening with deep analytics and stuff as well. So we're super pumped about what we have, what we can help customers accomplish. Time is money. And as you see, we've made it to where we can save you a lot of time, and you can have the conversations about money and about what the costs are to make some of these plans happen. Darren?
Awesome, Steve.
Any questions?
Steve, you were on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt. That was fantastic. So we are kind of close to our time, but I wanted to just to wrap with a quick summary of the Komprise solution. So hopefully it's clear to you all. Have some good feedback in the chat panels and from people who have been kind of focused in like me watching your demo. But it all starts with that know first, right? Analyze, understand, get that global index of everything you have in your environment. Then data mobility, whether it's tiering, we call it smart migration because it's not just a lift and shift. It's analysis first, it's tier and migrate, really blended into one solution. And then delivering data out to your data platforms, to your data engines, to your different data stores. And Steve talked about the smart data workflow. So a really powerful overview. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through it in such detail, Steve. So Jake, I'm just going to bring you in for the last word on the Komprise for NetApp and our partnership and next steps.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Darren. I think the main point of focus here is really as customers are moving to more of a hybrid approach to their infrastructure, Komprise gives you the ability to be that data management and mobility engine across all vendors, which I think as customers move from more of a storage centric to more of a data centric approach to what they have is going to be really, really vital as we move forward. So we're really looking forward to working with each and every one of you. And as Darren is showing up front here, this is the way that contact us the best is through email, and looking forward to getting those assessments rolling for everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And look forward to working with you all soon. You can visit komprise.com/demo to get a custom overview for you and your organization. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.